Hey, Buy Round listeners, I just want to let you all know that we've got Coaches Month coming up. So for the next 4 weeks, we have a current NRL coach being interviewed here exclusively on the Buy Round. So stay tuned for that. We've got 4 of the best current coaches. They will not disappoint. Make sure you tune in. We're not going away. We're going to be on the air till the 18th of December and have a little break until late January. The midweek show will be going strong as always, and the merchandise, lots of questions about when you can get the merchandise. You're going to have to exercise some patience, and stay tuned. It should be here in time for Christmas. That's the t-shirts in grey and in black, and also safety shorts. Lots of questions about them from our listeners. Stay tuned, be ready, because when they drop, they are going to go off. Thanks again for listening, Buy Round listeners, and be ready for Coaches Month. It's sure to be exciting. You will not be disappointed. Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Buy Round. We're here at the Bloke in the Bar studio, so big shout out to our friend of the show, Bloke in the Bar. If you love a beer, get Bloke in you. They are a great beer. I don't mind saying that because it actually is really good. Today, we have the privilege of being joined by the head coach of arguably the biggest team in the NRL, that's South Sydney, and their head coach, Jason Demetriou. Thank you for coming on to the Buy Round and sharing your story with us, mate. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, no worries, Jimmy. It's good to be here, mate. Looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, me too. So, firstly, how are you, mate? How's the off-season been for you?
Yeah, it's been good. I thought the back end of the year was a great way to finish the season, and disappointed in probably the second 40 minutes against Penrith, and spent a fair bit of time reflecting on that and how we improved that. But overall, it's set us up nicely for 2023, and just been doing a bit of PD on my own and a bit of review and reflection on things we did well and things we want to improve. But yeah, it's been good to spend some time with the family as well. Yeah.
So what does a head coach do with this time off, or what do you do with this time now? Personal development, how much preparation are you putting into next season?
Yeah, I think for me, as soon as the last game finishes, you're thinking about next season already. You're already looking at the things that, by the time the last game comes, you know the areas where you think you can improve and how you want to improve the squad. And exciting thing for us is we did that internally. I think, the emergence of Isaiah Tass and Isaac Thompson and Shaq Mitchell that come into our top 30 already in our squad. We won't have any new players come externally from anywhere. So that's real positive for us going forward. And for me, I like to get into some reading and some podcasts and just use those type of things to challenge the way I think and the way I do things, and different ways for me to theme the upcoming season. And it's not about copying and pasting, but it's just about challenging the way you think and you finding a way to interpret that in your own style.
Do you think that's an important trait for a coach, openness?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think being vulnerable in front of your group's really important. Probably 10, 15 years ago is not what coaches did. You were pretty much the dictator, and it's probably not how I coach. I'm more about player-led teams and them taking responsibility for the outcome over the 80 minutes, but also for the minutes that lead up to the 80. So, it's about how we use that to engage a playing group and to give them the voice to understand that this is their time and, their journey's on them. And, we're a facilitator at the end of the day, and we're finding ways that you can do that. And I feel like we took some good strides last year, but the real challenge now is how do we grow that and how do we make that something that lasts at the club for not just next year, but for the next 5 or 10 years.
Is that like setting the environment? I read something about leadership not that long ago, and you're like a gardener. So you don't actually, the plants don't grow because of you, but you set them up in a way to grow by fertilizing the soil, how much sunlight exposure, all that sort of stuff. Is that a similar analogy to how you would like to develop your players?
Yeah, it's a good one, actually, Jimmy. I never thought of it like that. But yeah, it's and I suppose there's an art in it as well. There's an art in guiding the players down that path you want them to take, and them getting there knowing that this is the road they want. And I suppose that's the biggest challenge for me. It's about motivating a group of players to go on a journey that they feel they can be successful in. And if you can get that holistically, but also individually with each player within your squad, then you got a pretty strong platform to work from. And there's a whole lot of the variables that come into it in terms of recruitment and player personnel and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, it's about a group of men that are motivated And I'm a big believer that emotion drives motivation, and whether that be negative or positive. But if we can tap into that and use that for every player to turn up excited to go to work, then that's half the battle.
Yeah, I guess it is, and that you set the environment to create that inner drive. That's it's
100%.
huge.
Yeah, there's nothing better than when you know you've set yourself on a path and you've put the things in place to achieve it, and you've done the work, and you get there and you achieve it. And I think you look at the emotion that comes out in players when they win grand finals, or in pre-season when you go through some grueling tasks, and at the end of it you've completed it as a group. That's genuine emotion that comes out from the sense of achievement. And I suppose it's finding little ways to get that feeling in training and inside your environment every week, and that motivates them to want it more.
Yeah, you're making me nervous thinking about pre-season and that mutual suffering. I don't miss that. And as the weather's starting to heat up a little bit as well. Keep me in that shade indoors all day. Back to that last game of last season, how much of a review would you do of that game? I think the first 35 minutes couldn't have gone much better for South Sydney. And then it was that 2 quick-fire tries, and then you go in at half-time. I imagine you were probably down in the lifts at Stadium Australia. I can't remember what it's called now. You're coming down in the lifts, and Toto's gone the length, and your team talk completely changed. It did seem to me as I was watching that game that really deflated the energy and the mood within Souths.
Yep.
Is that a fair assessment?
100%. Yeah. And I think that's our biggest learn. If someone had said to us at the start of the game, we're going to be 12 all at half time in a prelim final with Penrith, we're probably taking that and being excited about it. But I felt like as a team, we didn't handle that adversity, or that, there were tries that we shouldn't have conceded, but we did concede them. And I felt like we had an opportunity at halftime in particular to regroup, rethink, and come out with the same energy. And I felt like we'd come out with an attitude that the game was gone. And I think that's our biggest learn. We're a lot of young leaders in our team that are developing in junior to Tyler, Cameron Murray, our captain, Latrell Mitchell, and Campbell Graham. And I think that experience, we've got to be honest and review that as well. I'm not into this old, I don't watch it hurts too much rubbish. We watch games every week, all year, and learn from them and get better each week. So I don't know why we don't watch the last game. So it's something that we'll look at and reflect, but it'll be more on the mental side of things, because we proved physically that we can handle it. But also, I can't be naive to the fact that I feel like we ran out of troops in the second half as well. I think missing Tom was a real influence on the team, and losing Saliva Havili as well, who'd been outstanding for us through the season. They were probably 2 of our best go-forward middles, and I felt like at the 25-minute mark, if we were able to bring those 2 on, we were able to keep the foot on the gas. And there's one team that stopped us winning a comp in the last 3 years, and they're a pretty special footy side as well. But I think we've shown that we can get to that level. Now the challenge is us for mentally is to stay at it.
Yeah, I think you've shown that you can compete with them in the big games.
Yep.
You probably just need a little bit of a luck to go your way, and excuse me, a little bit of luck to go your way. And I think back to the Toto try, and was Cook taken out by his own man or something?
Cody was coming across to make the tackle and just got bumped off into Cookie.
Yes, that's right.
It was a comedy of errors, really. Yeah. Campbell Graham drops the ball when we've created a really good 2-on-1. There's a real opportunity for us to score off that set. In my head, I'd rather us have gone for the 1 point and get in at halftime 13-6. I thought would have been a real good reflection of the first half. But you back your players, they backed themselves, and I just felt like the way we handled that moment in the last, behind the goalposts in the change rooms at halftime. There's no bloke who was more dirty on himself than Campbell Graham for dropping the ball, or Cody for missing the tackle. But as a group, we've got to learn to deal with that, bin it and move on. And it's easy for me to sit here and say that I'm not playing in a prelim final when you're desperate to get through one of the best teams in the competition. But There was one team that was going to stop us, I felt like, in that final series, and they're the team that won the comp.
Do you think that's the ability that Penrith have as well, where they put that pressure on you? Because, again, logically thinking, I was commentating that game thinking Souths are going to set up for a shot at the field goal here. But the pressure that Penrith put on you mentally, you're either not thinking that, or you think you've got to go and come away with at least a try before halftime. You're thinking, well, 7 points isn't going to be enough.
Yeah, and I've said that. I think for us as well as a team, we know we're going to have to score 20-plus points to beat Penrith. We've scored 18, I think, once in the last 3 years we've played them, and we beat them in the semis up in Townsville. So we know, like, you're not going to beat Penrith in a 2-try game. You know, they'll grind you down, and Cleary's kicking game will create opportunities, and they'll jag a try. But I think the boys knew that, but to give the 2 tries, the first one come off an error when we had some field position, and then the second one come off an error, and they've picked it up and run the length. So I think the way they scored the tries is probably what affected us more than what the actual scoreboard was. But I think that internal noise and that body language and that effect it had on the players in and around it was something we need to address, and I'm confident the boys will. They'll address it, and we'll learn from it, and we'll be stronger for it next year.
So what we're talking, day one in January, when all the World Cup guys are back, you'll have a video review, or is that already taken place?
I think it'll be more with our leaders, sitting down and having an honest conversation in and around some areas in the game and watching the periods of it, and then talking about how we handled it and what can we do better. You know, as a coach, how did I handle that halftime? I felt like I, as I said before, addressed it in a way that, you know, we're 12 all here. We shouldn't be looking at what's gone wrong. You know, we're in this fight. But you know yourself, mate, when you're in that position as a player and your head's down, it's, you know, everyone thinks coaches say magic things, but the reality is the players, they're the ones who drive it. And, again, you know, it was a great effort for us to get through the Roosters and get through the Sharks in convincing fashion the way we did. And like I said, to be 12-0 up, I just feel like if we had a couple more troops, it would have helped us, but it didn't. And then how we respond. If we'd have lost the game 20 points to 12, I'd probably have sat here and been really, really proud of us. But the fact that the score blew out was an indication that it affected us more than it should have.
Yeah, I think that's a positive sign for Souths. If you can keep your best 17 on the field come finals time, because really that's what you need. Like, you look 100%. At Penrith were close to their best throughout the whole final, but 1 to 17 if you were picking them. You know, that trend usually it's a trend that is usually followed with whoever lifts that premiership. You need to stay healthy and suspension free. So I think there's good signs for Souths there moving forward into next year. You know, it's the stars have got to align, but I think certainly it's looking positive. I totally forgot the fact that you were missing so many middle forwards, they're hard.
Liam Knight out as well, who was out for the season. I think, you know, if I was to pick my best 17 tomorrow for round one, there's 5 players that were unavailable for the prelim last year. You know, so that's, again, you take 5 players out of your best 17. But again, we got to a position where we could have handled that a bit better, and if we'd have handled it better, would we have won the game? There's no guarantees, but it would have kept us in the fight longer and put more pressure on Penrith to win the game rather than us giving it to them, and that's probably the biggest learn for us.
Yeah. Before we go back and discuss your career and how you got to now, what else have you learned as a coach in the last 12 months? Obviously, you spoke about that last game, but I can only imagine your first 12 months in charge of an NRL team in a head coaching position. You know, I imagine it would have went so fast. But what sort of key learning areas, or what have you learnt about yourself, about the group? Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think for myself, I've learnt that I cope pretty well under pressure, and I don't put my feelings or anxieties when I'm under the pump onto the playing group, and I feel like I handled that pretty well, and I feel like that was important because they were feeling enough pressure and they didn't need to feel mine. So to be able to compartmentalise that and then turn up every day with a positive outlook, and then also I feel like I was able to not come in and say, right, this is what we're doing. I was able to say, bring the players on that journey of that player-driven culture, that you guys need to take ownership of this. And I feel like they did that really well. And like I said, it sets us up really well for this year. But I think the other thing as a club is, I think what we learnt is trust is so important inside your four walls. And no matter what the external noise is, if we trust in what we do and we keep working hard and we stay true to whatever it takes for that 80 minutes every week in our prep, then we know we're a good footy side and we're a good footy club. So I think the players will take a lot, and everybody involved in the staff as well. As you know, man, everyone's under pressure. This is NRL. It's not, it's you lose 2-3 games in a row and every coach is under pressure. So I think Brett Arthur was under pressure at one point and he's coaching in a grand final, and you just look at what's happened to Desi over the last few months. But we can't control that. We can only control what we do every day, and if we do that, then we're able to have a crack every week. Yeah,
it's a fickle industry. More power to you. We first crossed paths playing the Super League. You were at Wakefield Trinity Wildcats. I was at St Helens. Yep. You were always one of Wakefield's best players alongside,
thanks,
we were talking about him before, Michael Korkidas, who's still got an imprint in my shoulder, so wherever he is now, Jesus Christ, he used to run hard. You were actually a Man of Steel nominee as well. So you, at a club like Wakefield, that's huge. How did you land there at Wakefield?
It was a bit of a journey. I was a late bloomer. I was somebody who didn't shoot up and grow until I was 17, 18, and sort of got left behind size and development wise over here. And then as I started playing better footy, started coming through what was called the Metro Cup then. Was playing good footy and just couldn't quite get that opportunity. And Grant Jones, who was playing in it's similar to the New South Wales Cup now, back then said that you should go over to England. And my wife's family are Scousers, and they'd been over on a holiday and said, why don't you come over, we'll put you up. So I lived in Kirby.
Did you?
Yeah. And I learned all about the north of England living in Kirby. But
it's actually, I grew up in like the next suburb over to Kirby, in a place called McGull.
Yeah, it's it's a rough place. But I loved it. It's the Northern England, the people in north of England are just they're magic. It's so good, such a good place to live and to everybody's neighbourly, everybody loves helping out, and it's a place I'd go back to tomorrow. I love my time over there. But I ended up landing there, and I was driving around delivering yellow pages to Ern's meet at the start in my 300-pound Ford Escort, and just worked my way from there. I signed with Lancashire Lynx under a bloke called Steve Hampson, who played for Great Britain, a fullback.
Yes,
played some footy over here as well. Just worked my way up through there, got to Widnes and got promoted into Super League through Widnes, and then got an opportunity to go to Wakefield and spent 7 great years there, captained the club for 5 of those years. And I don't know, sometimes you go to a club where the club fits you as much as you fit it, and it was a place there. All my daughters were born. I got married when I was there, so it was a pretty special place to play footy.
Yeah. How different is the Wakefield Wildcats environment, changing room, facilities compared to South Sydney? So I used to dread playing at Bellevue. Like the field, did Wakefield have a groundsman? I don't think so. The field was always like concrete. You couldn't stand up in the away dressing rooms. One time as well, I don't know who your coach was, maybe John Keir, he painted the pink away changing rooms pink.
It's funny you say that, because it was St Helens who started that.
Ian Millward did start it, you're right. And then we turned up to play Wakefield, and the changing room was pink, and
we give you the hiding too.
We used to have horrendous away days at Wakey.
I think they used to cut the half. There was 2 parts to the away changing room, but they used to pull the sliding door down and make you all sit in one side. And we played at St Helens earlier that year, and they'd painted the changing rooms pink. And for some reason, when we came, I said, right, we're going to. We won like 7 straight at home after that. So it was Ian Millward, I think, said that the colour causes fatigue. It takes your attention away. But as soon as we lost, we painted it again. But the facilities were horrendous, to be honest. And And that's something that I'm quite proud of during my time there. It wasn't just about what you're able to contribute on the field. It was about dragging the club into the 21st century in terms of professional sport. I remember when the first year I was there and they were trying to make us travel down to London and play without staying the night before, and we had to buy all our own food. And I mean, the things that people here take for granted, players here take for granted, but in Northern England, you don't have leagues clubs. You don't have endless pots of money. The Sky money doesn't cover the cap. So you have to have owners that put in money, and sometimes that's a lot of money. So, and while, we challenge that and challenge the club to generate more revenue to make it an elite performance-based club, we understood as well that there wasn't the resources that everybody else had. So, but we did some good things alongside of Dave Solomona and Sid Domick and players like that who'd been at big clubs, had a real influence, and Gareth Ellis as well when I was there for the first year. So we made some real change to the club. I was watching the other day of them training and the gym and all the fancy stuff they got down there now, and I'm like, wow. But it's interesting because we're moving to a brand new facility too at Heffron in back end of January, and I'm really conscious of us not thinking that that's going to answer things that, it's going to give us a great platform to train from and a great platform to work from, but we've got to understand that we're a working class club and we've got to take that work ethic into those four walls. And yeah, it's something I'm conscious of moving forward.
Do you feel that's got to be part of South's identity, that working class nature? Because, I say this before sometimes, you take a player on a tour of a facility, but the 25k dumbbell still weighs the same,
it does,
even if it's in, the back end of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the 20-meter shuttle test is still 20 meters.
Yeah.
It's on the same. It's on maybe different grass, but it's still 20 meters. And you might get more from doing it in a shithole versus doing it in, being pampered too much. It's kind of a fine balancing act, I think, and that team ID, that team, what you stand for can be so important. If you get that wrong and then you pamper them, it must be a difficult balancing act for you as a head coach.
It is, because you want your players coming to work knowing that they've got everything they need to be successful. They don't have to think or stress about anything other than what they can control. But at the same time, you want them coming to the facility grateful that they have those resources. And again, sometimes that comes down to the people you recruit and the personalities that you recruit. So it's as much about as what goes on the field as the type of people you bring in the organisation off the field. And been pretty fortunate at South. We've had some pretty good leaders at the club that have set some really good foundations, and obviously Sam and what he did at the club, and John Sutton as well there. And having him back and in around the place, it just reminds people of what the club is about, and and that the history of that goes way back. So it's great. We have a lot of old boys that come to training, and the players often get off the field and go and sit with them and chat to them. So again, those type of things keep players engaged as well.
What's Sam's role there next year?
He'll be assistant coach. So there'll be John Morris, Ben Hornby and Sam. And we'll work through what that looks like in terms of definitive roles. But at the moment, as you know, in pre-season, everyone's hands on deck. It's more a high performance environment in terms of conditioning and things like that. But, Sam's got a great presence. He talks really well. He's passionate about what he does. I'm looking forward to helping him learn how to articulate that as a coach and how to plan. It's easy to say, come in, I want you to do this, but then to break that down over a pre-season to make sure that when you get to round one, you've built that process so it's ready to go. I mean, that's coaching. That's what it takes. It's otherwise you just chop and change all the time. You've got to have some things that you're keen on and you want your team to be about, and then, okay, strip that back and how do we build that so that by the time we get to round one and by the time we're in round 10, we've still fallen back to that same thing. So I'm really looking forward to being part of that journey with Sam, and he's got a big future as a coach. If that's what he wants, he might decide in 2 years' time he doesn't want it, but I'm pretty sure he will.
Yeah, it always interests me that with such a high-profile player that had such ability, it would be difficult for him to understand that maybe not everyone's Sam Burgess. Go and do just rip in and just get up for it. Well. Yeah. It's easy for you to say. Yeah. I'm not you.
Yeah.
So is that is that a tricky thing to help develop or to explain to him that you've got to really strip this back because these players aren't as naturally gifted as you, and maybe perhaps not as motivated, and can't carry a team. He carried their forward pack for so many years.
Oh, 100%.
Well, he was the inspirational
he was a leader. 100% he was. Yeah, I think when I learned very early on when I started coaching that the player I am at the end of my career wasn't the player I was at the start, and I need to be realistic in how I got to that point, not how I started. Because if I'm expecting everybody to be the end product, I'll be pretty disappointed most days. So, and that's harder for the higher profile players because regardless of whether it's intentional or not intentional, the ego grows. But it's, again, the enjoyment you get out of coaching is being able to get a guy to achieve something sometimes he's not even certain he can achieve. We had Isaac Thompson make his debut this year after 3 years out of the game, and dragged him out of driving a forklift away at 140 kilos, and he just come back to training this week. He's 100 kilo. He looks $1 million. And the difference that's had on his whole life, and what it will have for the rest of his life, is it's what coaching's about. And when you're playing, it's all about you. It's all about what you can achieve, what you can control. And when you're coaching, it's all about them. How do I serve them? And that's the hardest thing for when you get into coaching. It's the hardest thing to let go. It's not, you can tell all the stories, you can talk about, I do it all the time, because it's just, you just do. You just live your journey. But it's their time now, and serving them is the most important thing.
When you finished at Wakefield, there was almost a sliding doors moment because you'd actually signed for York as a player.
Yep.
But then out of the blue comes this offer to join the Keighley Cougars as a player coach.
Yep.
If that doesn't happen, do you get into coaching?
Well, I'd signed at York as a player and assistant coach to Dave Wood. So I was going to start. The coaching was what I wanted to do. I'd done my level 3. I was doing my level 3, and I coached when I was younger. Before I went to England, I'd coached kids for 7 years. So coaching was always something that I wanted to. And as you know, as you get more experienced and you become a senior player, you genuinely are a coach at training, whether that's on terms of attitude things or technical stuff and what you do. And I learned a lot from John Keir playing under him at Wakefield and the way he motivated people. But yeah, it is a sliding door. Without that opportunity, I'm not sat here talking about coaching South Sydney. Without the decision to get on a plane and buy a one-way ticket to England and challenge myself to see where my footy career can go, and the support of my wife, and I'm not sat here. The English game gave me so much to be thankful for, and I'll always be a huge ambassador to support what that game does over there. And I'm forever grateful that I was able to spend the time over there and get the opportunities that I did.
What's it like being a player coach?
Yeah.
Like that must... I don't know if that could exist at the top level anymore. Like it used to happen, but I don't know. I reckon that'd be a strange double role.
Yeah, it is. To be fair, the biggest challenge is making sure that your effort is good every week. I was more an effort player anyway. I wasn't, the most talented, but I was in the fight a lot of the time, so it didn't hamper me too much. But I knew that when I was out there, I had to be committed. I had to be I can't talk at halftime, or I can't review the game if I'm not having a crack. And to be honest, the only reason I played is because my wife just had a baby, our youngest daughter, Sienna. I'd had knee surgery, and I had to earn money. Like, my wife wasn't working, and playing gave me some batchies. So my knee was busted. I was tramadol every week, but I actually absolutely loved finishing my career playing for Keighley, because it reminded me of just enjoying playing footy, just being with guys who train just as hard as first graders, but work all day, come to training at night, but just love it. And you forget sometimes when you're on this crazy journey how much you just love the game, and really gave me some excitement to finish my career.
Yeah, and a bit of perspective as well. Like you've been a professional, like a full-time professional there in the Super League, and then there's guys here that are beyond committed.
Yeah, I mean, I went from playing in the championship to getting promoted to playing 9 years of Super League to then coming back and finishing in the championship. So it was a bit of a full circle journey for me. But I'll never forget my coach, the interview for the Keighley job. You'll love this story. I got a phone call. Barry Eaton had gone, I think, to Leeds, or he'd changed jobs to go somewhere, and I got a phone call saying there's an opportunity. Can you come for an interview? And I was like, yeah, sweet. So I drive out to Keighley. It's mid-December, and I was driving a pallet truck at Wicks at the company at the time because, like I said, I'd been out of contract. I needed to earn some money, and so I was doing that. And then I got there, and everything was pitch black. There was no lights on, and I was trying to find my way around. They escorted me upstairs to the bar area where the interview would take place, and there's some candles on the table. There's no power. So you imagine in England, there's no power, there's no heating, it's freezing. And we're sat there in candlelight doing this interview because they've gone into administration, they haven't paid their bills, so the power and everything's been shut off. And they're saying, look, we really want you to coach a team. The job's yours. We've got no money for players, but it's yours. Do you want it? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm playing. But I loved it. I loved it because I had to embrace, how do I find initiatives to generate money? How do I rebuild trust with some sponsors in the area? I remember getting rid of the groundsman, and then I ended up marking the line. So if you ever go back some videos of those days and watch the line marking, it's pretty dodgy, but it saved me £500 a week. And £500 a week allowed me to get 2 more players. So it was just fine. And you learn in England that every dollar counts, every penny counts. And if you can maximise the value of every dollar you spend, then you give your team the best chance they can.
Man, that's a crazy beginning.
Yeah. I remember one day the toilets had blocked because they were using hand towels instead of toilet paper. And I turned up before the players, luckily, and the changing room, I swear on my life, was full of turds. Oh, just logs spread across the changing room floor. And I'm like, so we get the marigolds on, and in I go, and assistant turned up. Even my wife was helping us, and we're cleaning it all out, unplugging the drains and cleaned it out, and the floor was soaking when they got in there, but it didn't smell. So it was a crazy experience, but I loved it.
Let's hope you. Well, I can't envisage you having that problem at your new facility, but if the toilets are blocked, Russell Crowe doesn't need to ring a plumber. Just get you in.
I didn't know Keighley had that many people that use the toilets at the facility at the time.
That's rank. So you're at Keighley. You'd spent so much of your adult life over in England. What brought you back?
I think I wanted to raise my kids in Australia. I just felt like outdoors wise there was a bit more opportunity for them over here, and I felt like my wife had done her time. I knew she wanted to go back, and I wouldn't be sat here without her, but she would never have said to me, we're going. But I had to start, and it's hard to do when you're a player and because you're very selfish. So no, I think it's time to take Natalie back. She's been away from her family and her friends for a long time. And so I started searching for opportunities for coaching jobs back in Australia. And if I didn't get one, I would have stayed. It wasn't a matter of I need to go now. It was let's see what's out there. And yeah, opportunity came through an interview process and got the job at Northern Pride. And that was a great platform again to move my coaching career further.
Did you take a couple of the Wakey lads?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Because I remember watching a game, like it must have been on Fox or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is half the old Wakefield team here. I was like, well, what? It's like 2008 Wakefield team rocking up for the Northern Pride.
You got to call your mates, don't you? So we had Semi Tajalala came.
Yes, that's right. That's one of the guys I remember.
And he's from the area. His family live in the area, that worked out really well. And then Sam Obst, I convinced Sam to come back. Obsty. He's still there, the little hobbit. He is, yeah.
He came out. He was good mates with Chris Flannery.
Yeah, he is.
And
yeah,
he got into a St. Helens team drink once.
Yeah.
And got absolutely destroyed.
Oh yeah, that's obviously, yeah.
He was outstanding value.
Midgets shouldn't drink that much, mate, should they? But no, he's a great fella, Obsty, and he's assistant coach. He's been there for a long time. He's, Lauren, he's got an English partner as well, so they've settled in Cairns. Sammy's still there. Steve Snitch was another guy.
Snitch, yes.
Who came
Can't
over.
tell him anything.
Yeah, that's true. But he stayed 1 year, and then I got over Tyrone McCarthy, who was outstanding for us. So I used my connections well over in England, and it was good to have some familiar faces to start at a new club.
Yeah, I bet. And then you get on this journey into you leave the Northern Pride and become an NRL assistant coach.
Yeah.
How difficult is that? You bounce from the Cowboys to the Dragons, the Broncos, and Souths. That's a lot of moving around. That's a lot of instability.
Yeah.
How much are you behind the decision to move or take up a new opportunity, or is it we're moving on kind of thing? We're going to freshen up the backroom staff.
I actually never got moved on from anywhere, except for Brisbane. Wayne and I got the sack at Brisbane, but it was a great year at the Cowboys under Greeny, and it was a transition year for me because I'd been a head coach for 4 years and come in with just so much energy and excitement and what you want to do more, and you have to quickly learn that no, you've got a small box that you're in, and probably a little bit of adjusting to becoming an assistant, but we did that pretty well and obviously had a very successful season, and the opportunity to go to the Dragons to take my family back down to Sydney where we were from, where we'd been away from for the last 16 years was just an opportunity. I thought, again, it was for the family, but it also gave me an opportunity to coach. I still felt like I needed a bit more time as a head coach. I got the opportunity to coach the Cutters. That was a great experience. And then at the end of that year, I got the phone call from Wayne to go to Brisbane. And I remember speaking to him on the phone, and first time I'd ever spoken to him, and he said, I want you to come and work for Brisbane. What do we need to do? And I said, well, I'll text you my wife's number. You're probably going to need to talk to her. And again, like I say, my wife's been just a fantastic support of my career. And I told her Wayne Bennett just called me, and she was at work, and she said, does that mean we're moving to Brisbane? And I said, well, yeah, it's just an opportunity you can't turn down. It was such a to work for one of the greatest coaches that's ever coached in rugby league, and for him to want you to go work for him was just an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And again, I wouldn't be sad if I didn't make that decision.
Was that a totally out the blue phone call?
Yeah. We just won the competition with the Cutters. So I'd had a pretty good run that 3 years. I'd won the Queensland Cup with the Northern Pride, then the NRL competition of the Cowboys, and then the New South Wales Cup as well the following year. So I keep saying away, and my premierships dried up when I went to him, but he doesn't handle it too well. But it was just the best part about it was when I got there, he said to me, I want you to act and think like a head coach. I don't want you to be worried about stuff. Be honest. We have conversations. We go out in the field. We're all on the same page. And to work as an aspiring young coach for somebody who's so stable in what he does and how he does it, and to give you the confidence to express yourself, was easily the best environment. And it's set me up nicely for the role I'm in now. Yeah.
Back to that Cowboys team that won the premiership. How special was that to be a part of? The history-breaking Cowboys team, and seeing the emotion on everybody's face.
Yeah, it was
in one of the craziest grand finals.
Yeah. For me, I was I'd coached Cole Felt for 2 years leading into that game at Pride, and then obviously he scores the winner, and it was a year that just got better and better. We lost our first 4, I think, or first 3 on the bounce, and we were favourites at the start of the year, and we probably took that pressure into the start of the year. And I remember us beating Melbourne in round 4, and JT kicked a field goal to take it into Golden Point, and then kicked a field goal to win it, and we ended up winning the next 10 straight after that as well, to win 11 straight. But the year just kept growing, and the belief in the team, the belief in the club, and the belief in the community really grew. I remember getting on the bus to go. Oh, actually, when we came back, we beat Melbourne in the prelim, and we were on the plane back, and we landed at the airport, and I reckon there was probably 7,000 people in the airport just going bananas when we got off the plane, and you were like, that's when you really understood it's not just about the Cowboys. This is a whole region of people that are behind this footy team. And, yeah, the scenes after the game up in Townsville, and not just Townsville, the players took the trophy around to Mackay. They took it to Cairns. They just did a bit of a tour of North Queensland, and there was thousands everywhere they went. So, yeah, to be part of something that always is the first will go down in history is pretty special.
So, yeah, you're working with Wayne Bennett at Brisbane.
Yep.
Now I can remember being in England camp. He was the England coach. And the news was breaking about him being sacked from Brisbane. There's also some other staff members there.
Yeah. Jeremy Hickman's
and Scotty Barker. Yeah, but they were genuinely like, we'd been speaking to them, rumours had been, and they're like, oh, we don't know. And then bang, wake up one morning and there's, clearly something's happened. And, that sort of transpires. How was that for you? I didn't realise you'd been like sacked from Brisbane. Yeah. And was it an automatic thing to follow Wayne to Souths?
No, it wasn't automatic. I ended up, my family stayed in Brisbane for 12 months. This was a decision that was made in December. So to pack your family up and move, Christmas time, or when my eldest daughter was my middle daughter was starting year 7 at a new school. So it was just a really difficult time to take them away. I'd never spoken to anyone from South, and the time when I was off, I went and met with Shane Richardson, who was making the decision who Wayne's assistant would be with a view of having a succession plan in place. And so I'd met with him, and I sort of knew that there was going to be an opportunity there, if I wanted it, and I definitely wanted it, but nothing was set in stone. For my family, the best thing would have been to stay at Brisbane. Career-wise, it was easily the best thing that happened in the long run. But again, I think backroom staff need to be protected more in the game. It's so easy. I mean, we got offered a month's pay. We all got sacked. Jeremy Hickman's turned down a 3-year deal at the Titans because he still had his contract to run, and he had 2 years left on his contract and got offered a 1 month's salary in December. When you're a head coach, that doesn't happen, but it does to support staff, and people don't realise that. It's a brutal. There's guys. Jeremy was out of the game for 18 months, couldn't get a job back in the game, and thankfully, he's back in there now. But I think that's probably an area that no one talks about, and they're the guys who struggle the most because they're not on the big money. They're on earning, smaller wages, and losing their job has real impact, especially when you're not given but there's ways you go about it. I don't, if in July, August you're told they're going in a different direction, gives you opportunity to find another job. But in December and all along we were told our jobs are safe. We would be there in 2018, no 19. And then we'd actually all gone to watch the Jeff Horn and Anthony Mundine fight. And then we were all like, yeah, all right, Wayne said he's staying and he's not going anywhere, and all right, that's good. So we get up the next day and, got a phone call saying that Wayne had been sacked and you're on guard and leave. But even then I was told I'll have a job. I'm not going to get stood down. And then a week later you get told you're done. So then the game begins, try to get some money and make sure your family's okay for the next couple of months. But, yeah, it was a tough time. It was an indication of how brutal the NRL world can be from a coaching or support staff, and it's one of the reasons I'm passionate about making sure that our staff are looked after and treated as equals in line with the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never thought of it like that from a support staff point of view, but
yeah, it's tough.
That's a brutal reality of
Well, head coach goes, he changes his staff. It generally happens. Yeah. But, in employment law, then the NRL's probably got to look at something that, there's got to be a timeline on when those decisions are made. You got to give, there's a human aspect to it as well, and I think that it can't happen as a player, and nor should it.
You'd think from a club perspective, we spoke about setting up that environment that you wouldn't want people walking around, worried about their future.
Yeah.
I've seen it before where support staff have been strung along off contract, and the July goes and they still don't know. And so
well, often what happens is
make a call, just make a call,
often what happens is they're talking or they're trying to lock in what their next plan is, and they don't want to give any information out, so they don't. And then by the time the decisions are made, then you get to find out. And I get that, but one of the things I really respected Wayne for when he came to South was he said, no, anyone who's got a job and wants to stay can stay. No one's going to lose their job because I'm coming to South Sydney. And I thought that was a good sign of the things that Wayne values.
So when you join South, do you know you're in that succession plan, or is that something that you had to earn?
No, I had to earn it. Yeah, I knew that there was an opportunity there for me to be that option for a succession plan. So the first 12 months was about me showing them what I'm about, what I do, and by the end of that 12 months, the decision was made that I would be the succession plan, and it was locked in, so it was good.
So you did one season knowing you were going to take over one more season as an assistant.
Yeah,
knowing you're going to take over the following year. That's just happened.
No, I'd signed the succession plan in, I think it was February, March of 2020.
Right. Okay.
So I still had it's 2 seasons.
Yeah, 2 seasons.
So nothing changed for me, especially in the first year. There had no influence or no extra responsibilities or anything. And then it wasn't until probably halfway through the second season when the recruitment decisions and that were being made. So then Wayne and I and the club I'd have more involvement in decisions then. And Wayne was really good in that succession. He said, if it's anything that's beyond my time, then you need to have a voice in that. And I was really conscious of just staying in my lane and I don't need to get ahead of myself. I need to respect Wayne's the coach. And I felt like we both handled that pretty well.
It'd be difficult, no doubt. But I think the best way for a club to handle, the succession is to come from within rather than completely change it all over again. Because you would have a fair idea of what's worked and then put your own little touch, little spin on it. You don't need to come in and reinvent the wheel. You're familiar with the players, what gets them going, what doesn't, what the personality style's like. It's when you exit strategy from a major coach, it's important. I believe the best strategy is to come from within.
I think as well, like it differs on how the team goes. If you're, if we'd have got the wooden spoon, and then now you're taking over, it's a difficult one because you're part of that setup that's got the wooden spoon. So now you've got to try and get the trust. But like I said, we got beaten in grand final. While that brings different pressures because there's expectation on you to perform, it also set a good platform. And I've said it before, and I'll say it many times, is that I didn't fear taking over from Wayne because I wasn't going to come in and say everything Wayne did is going. I didn't have that, I suppose, need to show everybody that I can do different to what Wayne does. I like a lot of the things Wayne does, and we think very similar on a lot of things. But ultimately, how I transition, how I get my message across, I've got to be authentic to who I am as well. But having that 3 years with the players leading in was huge because I developed pretty good relationships with them, and it was really important to stay in my lane so that they knew the respect I had for Wayne before my time would come, because anything out of that wasn't going to be good for me.
Yeah. And the old story goes that clubs go south when Wayne leaves. It was hard to ignore. Was that on your mind at all? I mean, you proved it not to be true all the time, but was that weighing on your mind? It would have been hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think my time at Wakefield probably helped set me up for that. Every year at Wakefield, we were told we were going to get relegated. We're going to rubbish. We can't do this. We can't do that. And we sort of had we knew what we could control, and we trained hard. And while we might not have won a comp, we were always in the fight. We made finals a couple of years, and we were always there knocking about. But I think that sort of helped me a little bit because it's hard when people are saying that you're going to fail. When the general consensus is you're not going to be successful, and that's before you've even started. And then with every loss, those drums get louder. So, but I was pretty comfortable, mainly because I knew we had a really strong club. I got an outstanding board, but even more than that, I've got a real trust in the playing group and what they're capable of achieving, and I had to make sure that was the most important thing. It wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't about me succeeding Wayne and proving that I'm up. I could be coaching for 20 years and still not be compared to Wayne, but if at the end of my career people say, he learned a lot, you could see, and there's some comparisons with Wayne, I'll be stoked. That'll be pretty good. There's worse things than be considered to be similar to Wayne Bennett. So that was important. It was important that the players seen that I respected what Wayne had built, and that we'd built together, and that our next job was to carry that on.
I spent only a short amount of time, relatively speaking, with Wayne, but a lot of things he said stuck with me and have stayed with me to this day. Yeah. Is it the same with you?
He's got a knack of, when I first spoke to him and then the first conversations I had with Brisbane, Wayne's got a really good knack of having a conversation with someone and then you walk away feeling good about yourself. It's a real art that he's got, and I think his maturity and his standing in the game has given him that aura, but he then backs it up with the way he communicates with people, and that's from everyone in the organisation. It's not just the playing group. And in saying that, one of the things I loved about him the most was, as you do as assistant coaches and coaches, you have your disagreements. You have times where, no, I think we should do this. And one of the things I remember him that stuck in my mind is he said, don't bring me the problem, bring me the solution. I'm open to you talking to me. Don't just come into here and tell me, I don't like this we're doing, but tell me, why don't we try this? What do you think? And if you're bringing me options or solutions, then I'm willing to listen. But if you just want to point out the obvious, then leave that for the people in the stands. And it made me really think every time I spoke to him, mate, I've been thinking about this, back it up with some video or some stats or some ways of articulating that this could be good for us. And he was great. And there's times where he'd go, yep, I agree. And other times he'd go, no, we're doing it my way. And as an assistant, you go, yeah, that's sweet. You're not expected just to have your say. At the end of the day, you're an assistant. He's the boss. But again, it wasn't too often. But anything we did, we were always on the same page by the time we walked out of the coach's room. And I think that's important. It's so important that the playing group see that the coaches and all the staff are aligned, because players are like kids. They'll play one parent off on the other. So if they get an opportunity to, they'll know where the chink is. And it's usually me with my kids. They come to dad to get what they want. But yeah, it is. It's so important that you're aligned.
It is that you. Excuse me. It is important that consensus. Yeah. From a staff point of view, because you're right, players will pick it up.
Oh yeah. And if you've got a staff member who likes feeding it, then it's trouble. And sometimes as a head coach, you won't know until it's too late. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Going back to Wayne, staying on Wayne. You seem very different in terms of especially your approach with the media. You're very open. You come on the Sunday Simbin all the time. I think, Wayne has been on this podcast and he was outstanding, but typically after a game, he's not giving much away. No. Well, is that the new modern coach, you think, or it's just your personality versus his personality? Why is it that you are so open to even coming on here and sharing your story?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable being vulnerable. I'm comfortable in sharing my truth to an extent. I'm always thinking about protecting the team, and I'll never go to a point where I'm putting the team or a club in any harm. But at the same time, that's who I am. I'm pretty honest. I like to be upfront with people, and sometimes it's not what people like to hear. But we go into a press conference for a reason. They're there to ask questions about the game and for you to give an opinion. And I think, for me, my thought process is I have a responsibility to answer those questions, or as difficult as they are sometimes. But I think, Wayne comes from a bit of a different era where you say less. But he has his way of saying things, without him actually putting his name to it. He's pretty good like that. I'm sure people...
He just used Ben Dobbin, doesn't he?
Yeah, Ben, Pete Bedell. Yeah, they're...
Dobbo, if you're listening.
But again, that's one of the things I learnt from Wayne. There's a time to speak and there's a time not to speak. And I remember going to a press conference this year with Latrell, and he captained the side and said, "Mate, don't talk too much." And he was that excited. We had a really good win at Newcastle with half our squad missing, and but it was one of the best press conferences I've seen Latrell do. Like, he was just so open, so funny, bit of energy about him. And people want to see that. They want to see you be authentic. And what I liked about the last 12 months of working with Wayne, and it coincided with cameras inside the changing room, is people got to see the real Wayne. They got to see him dancing in the changing room. They got to see him clowning around with the playing group. That he wouldn't naturally share that.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity for people to get a real glimpse into why he gets the relationships he does with his playing group. And I'm sure, I think Wayne likes the media more than he portrays. But I was watching his press conference the other day. He was loving it. He'll be back on the farm now. He won't turn up to pre-season until December. But, again, I've got to be authentic to who I am.
Yeah. Going back in terms of some of those recruitment decisions, one of the big decisions that South Sydney made was to not offer a longer term contract to their local junior superstar player and captain, Adam Reynolds. Were you a part of those discussions? Well, sorry, you were a part of those discussions, I'm assuming, and what was your input?
My input was I wanted Adam to take a 1-year deal. And the reason that we weren't able to offer him more than that was because of the cap space beyond that. And as you know, you take the 1-year deal, gives us time to move things and see how we can free up some cap. And one of the conversations I had with Adam was, I want you to stay. I know you want longer term, but if you take this, I'll find a way to make sure you finish your career here. But again, that's asking him to take a huge leap as well. He had a 3-year offer on the table, which potentially could be a 4-year deal. He's always wanted to move to Queensland, Adam, anyway. So I sort of knew that, this was an opportunity for him for a fresh start. But the other side of it was whether you win a comp or you're in prelims and you're successful for a few years in a row, people want your players. And we had a group coming through in Cameron Murray, Campbell Graham, Junior Tyler, Keelan Kuala-Matangi, who's went from minimum wage to 500 to 900,000 in between there somewhere. So there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of transition for playing group, and there are contracts that have happened before you take over that are there. That had you had that, maybe they wouldn't be, and you would have prioritised making sure Adam stayed. But I could only control what was there, and I didn't want Adam to go, but at the same time, I knew for the stability of the squad moving forward, it was probably the best decision.
Yeah. When he was leaving, were you always looking at Ilias, or did you look around as well?
I was looking at Ilias definitely for long term, but we'd signed Milford for 12 months.
Yeah.
And then through this great stand-down policy the NRL has, he was stood down out of the game and not convicted of any of his charges and welcome back, but unfortunately that missed the opportunity to play for South. But the idea was that Milford would also, have a bit more experience in that transition year when Adam was gone, and that would give Lockie 12 months to really settle in, learn off a new player, and have probably play 4 or 5 first-grade games. And obviously that decision was taken out of our hands. So, just fast-tracked everything. Fast-tracked Lockie's move up into that number 7 spot. And I knew the players wanted Lockie to get his crack. And what I like about Lockie is he competes. He's one of our fittest, strongest players in the club. He competes in everything he does at training. And when a player's that attitude, they're going to get to where they want to go. And I couldn't be more proud of the way he handled his first year in first grade. And just watching him play for Greece, although they got thumped, his ability to keep competing on every play, chasing back. He probably topped the tackle count and try saves. Not that they did much. They scored every tackle in after that anyway, but he just kept turning up, and I'm really excited for what he'll do next year and beyond.
Yeah, well, you can never argue watching him that he doesn't appear to have a dig, especially when he was playing for Greece. But there was a big incident this year. Sorry for bringing it up, but I've kind of got to hooked during midway through the first half. No, I don't think I was. Do you think the press overreacted?
Well, yes and no. I understand the reaction. I knew the minute I said I want to take Lockie off, the minute I said that, I knew what was coming.
So is this so in the coach's box, right? That game was like it shocked me.
It was horrific, yeah.
But in the coach's box, you're thinking, I'm going to get Ilias off here, but you're already going, there's going to be a there's just I
don't think I'm thinking overly about it, but I know. Yep, it's a decision I'm going to make, and I know that I'm going to cop it, but I'll stand by it. It was the right decision to make. He was struggling, and he had a glassy look in his eye. And you've played with young blokes, and the things aren't going their way, and they're like a deer in headlights, and they haven't got the experience or the capability to come through that yet. And I felt like if I left him out there, and it was 30-0 at the time, he had been involved in the last 2 tries. If I leave him out there and we get beat by 60, how am I going to play him next week? How am I going to get this kick? Because I know what's going to – if I don't get him off, who's going to be the scapegoat in this? Shouldn't have let Reynolds go. Ilias is not up to it. So I said no. And what people don't realise is the first bloke who got hooked was Tom Burgess. He got hooked at the 13-minute mark because he was playing horrific as well. And then Cameron Murray got taken off at the 25-minute mark, which never happens because he was playing so terrible. So Lockie was like the third bloke who came off. But because the other 2 are forwards, it doesn't stand out as much. And I'd spoken to Lockie for 4 weeks, twice in the last 4 weeks about I felt like he was starting to feel I feel like he lost his motivation to prove people that he can handle it. Was starting to get a bit comfortable, and also he was starting to look a bit fatigued. He was needling his AC, and I'd been umming and ahhing about resting him for a week, but I think that was the lead up. There was a bye week after that. It was a lead up to, so I thought, well, get him through this game, then he'll get the bye, and yeah. But I knew what was coming, and I knew how I was going to handle it as well. If I'd have dropped him to reserve grade, then that would have caused more problems. Not only for externally, but more on him. And it was never about that. It was about taking him out of the fire, reset, and all right, off you go again. And as it turned out, he knocked himself out in the next game anyway, so he got another rest, which was, it was a tough period, but it was a tough period that we all go through.
Yeah.
You play your first game of first grade and then play for the rest of the year or never get dropped out of first grade again. It very rarely happens that you come in and you stay there forever. So,
and he's still a teenager, right?
He's 20.
20, yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, he hasn't played footy for 2 years.
Yeah.
People forget these guys down. He played more games by halfway through the year than he'd played combined in the previous 2 seasons. So he missed that development as well. And then you boom, straight into first grade. So I've got a great relationship with Lockie. I love coaching him. I knew he would handle it well. I just needed to protect him from the externals, and I actually didn't mind it because I copped it. Took pressure off him, but it also allowed me to say, mate, I told you where we're going here. You need to get yourself focused. You need to start, and that period we lost on a Thursday night. We had a bye round the next week, so it wasn't until, I think it was 12 days before we actually had contact with the whole team again. And I found out through that week there was 3 days where he was in practicing his kicking, doing little things. And he, like I said, he was really honest. No, you told me that I need to be better, and I do need to be better. And so it was about now, okay, getting him back out there, getting him going. And I thought he was outstanding the back end of the year, and he'll be better for it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's benefit to hardship, and no one's career is this red carpet ride through the NRL or
any profession, you're gonna face setbacks, and for him to be 20 years of age, like
I think if he hadn't been the succession to Adam Reynolds, it wouldn't have been the story that it was. But he was, and I understand that is a story. But I had Cody Nikorima, who's played Test footy for New Zealand. He's playing elite level player in the halves or in hooker, sat on the bench, 30-0. I need someone to come on and that can handle this type of situation. The Dragons were destroying us. We were poor. And, we won the next 50 minutes 12-0 and probably should have scored another 2 tries, but it stemmed the flow a little bit anyway.
Yeah, I guess it did. One of the other superstars that you've got at your disposal is Latrell Mitchell. I haven't
heard much about Latrell. Do we know much about
Latrell? He's over in England at the minute, playing in the number 8 jersey. I say this all the time. I can't. Doesn't look right.
No,
like he's a talented player, but I don't know about playing prop.
It's ridiculous.
They say he can play anyway, but
ridiculous,
that's a bit silly. But he's in England at the moment, but he actually spent some time in the United States of America this year. Who comes up with that idea, and do you think that will be the norm? Like, let's say, for example, Jacob Host pulls his hamstring. Is he going to America?
Sorry, Hosty, probably unlikely, mate. Look, I think what people, I've had this discussion with the senior leaders at our club, that what we got to understand is Latrell he's a different beast when it comes to notoriety, media interest. He deals with more than 99% of NRL players, and he has more. And that's he's almost at Shane Warne level now in terms of the level of interest he has, whether positive or negative. And to get him out of the limelight and really focused on himself and his recovery, I thought it was going to go one or two ways, because he doesn't like being away from home. So there was a bit of buy-in required from him. But I'll give Bill Knowles a lot of credit, because he's that quirky personality, and he drives you, but he makes it fun. And he's a great teacher. And Latrell came back in a really good headspace. I think the fact that the club had spent that money really investing in him, he was keen to come back and repay that faith. And he wanted to repay his teammates. He wanted to show his teammates that he's here. And I didn't know it at the time, but there was, after the Dragons lost, there was a tweet someone put out, and I'd only seen it probably 2 months later, that coach is rubbish. Someone else, I can't remember exactly what it said, and then underneath it there was a message from Latrell that said, "I'd love to revisit this in 6 weeks' time," something along those lines, and which I went, wow, it was such a, that's, and he'd come back the following week, and I think we won 5 of our next 6. So that's for him to go in there and put it out there. All right, let's see in 6 weeks' time, it was pretty special to. And that's him. That's the choice. He loves playing for the club. He loves representing his teammates. Again, I spoke about it before. Emotion drives motivation, and emotion sometimes with him and Cody can be their undoing as well. But majority of the time, it's a passion that people they want to play with. He's so infectious. I love coaching him. He's as honest as the day's long. He'll tell you what he thinks, but he'll also do what you ask him to do as well. And there's no doubt how talented he is, and I still think his best footy's ahead of him, which is exciting.
Do you think with a player like him, and people argue about, is it too much passion? But when there's a lack of it, that's when you need to worry.
Oh, 100%. I'd rather have too much and not enough. If you're not passionate about playing for the jersey, then, Jimmy, passion was a big part of how you played. We play a game it'd be up there with the most brutal sports in the world. And you can't run on the field without getting yourself into a place where not many people go. And then Latrell, the expectation on him means he has to get even further than that. And sometimes he might cross that line a little bit. But I don't think he did that. I thought his discipline this year was outstanding. And I think part of that was him having more of a leadership responsibility and how he owned that. And inside our 4 walls, his leadership was outstanding. And he was a great support for Cam Murray and and Cody and those guys when he came back, because he likes to stand in the centre room and say, this is what I'm doing. And, the boys respond to that, which is great.
How much time do you spend with Latrell? Like, how much do you need to manage him, or is he someone that you leave alone? How often do you sort of have those conversations with him?
It's obviously a little bit more than most, but no more than Cody or Cam Murray or Damien Cook. They're your senior leaders, so you do spend a bit more time or have a few more discussions with those guys. But it's more about just him understanding the importance every word he says or every action he makes and how that influences people around him and the power that gives him. He only turned 25 recently, and that responsibility and that understanding of how you influence other people is pretty powerful once you understand how to use it. And he's starting to get to grips with that, and I think he's only going to get better with it as well.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on the boos he received at the back end of the year?
Yeah, I get it. It's the Roosters, and we're playing the Roosters, and he's a player who left there. And I think the media probably have a bit to answer to for that. I really do. I feel like he was. I feel like the tackle on Joey Manu. It had a bad outcome. And you've played the game enough. I've seen probably 30 or 40 broken cheekbones in my career. It's not an injury that doesn't happen. It happens not often, but it does happen. And it's an accident. He's lost his feet and he's dipped in. Latrell doesn't leave the ground, and it's an unfortunate incident. But the reaction to it and the response and how deliberate everybody tried to portray that sort of led to people having that boo mentality towards Latrell, and he can't answer that. He can't do anything about that, and I thought he handled that pretty well. And I thought the response he got the following week after the finals, I remember the crowd cheering him when he was being interviewed on Fox, and we didn't know. We just responded to the crowd, and it was a pretty special moment. But again, it's like there's always villains and heroes, isn't there, in sport? And sometimes you don't want to be the villain, but people make you it.
Do you think you would have him to look to embrace that?
Yeah,
like
I think for it. Yeah,
almost like play the character, just embrace, make it drive you.
Yeah, I think that there is scope to do that, but you've also got to understand that when you're copping it, you got to handle it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's easy to say just go with it, but when you're copping it at the level, I thought Paul Cullen was someone who did that really well, and still does. And he's someone who's got that personality as he just handles it. But Latrell is a bit more of a. He's more of that flashy player who's expected to come up with the winning plays. He's not expected just to do a couple of strong carries, and he's expected to do more brilliant things than most. So, but look, we just love having him around. Really hopeful and excited that he'll extend his time at the club. I know how much the players love playing with him. And for him, hopefully, to lock himself in long term says what Souths mean to him as well. One thing I really like about Latrell is he knows who he is. He's passionate about being an Indigenous man, and he wants to have a positive influence on Indigenous people. And I think that's something that should get him a lot more credit than it does.
Yeah, I agree with you. But he is that type of player, though, that, I know watching the games, he gets the ball and it's like,
yeah,
what's he
100%.
And when he doesn't do something spectacularly, kind of next one then. And then again, there's a lot of expectation, not just from Sal, but any NRL fan. He is a reason. He attracts eyeballs, and people want to see the magic that he brings.
Yeah.
They want to see highlight reel stuff every single time he touches the ball.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, in the good games or against the top sides, he's got to be comfortable in maybe not having that moment, and that's hard to do when there's an expectation of you to have those moments. But if you look at statistically, since he came back, he only played half a season. I think he was second for most try assists behind Nico Hines. And everyone tells me he's not a fullback. I mean, I don't know how. Nico Hines, I don't think he missed a game. Might have missed one game when he was rested over the Origin period or something. But his contribution to what we do with the football and the way that frees up Damien Cook, Latrell, Cody Walker and Cameron Murray is immense because all of those players benefit from that as well. So, and again, if we're all doing their roles, they all complement each other really well.
I didn't realise he was second in try assist. That's crazy.
Well, you won't realise it because it's not what we want to talk about with Latrell, is it?
No, you're right. Yeah. Mate, on his hamstring, just thinking about training loads, contact in training, something I've been looking at myself with a separate podcast, Head Noise, and the NFL they strictly police the amount of contact that is permitted in training, and the players buy into it. The coaches, more importantly, they buy into it. Yeah. Is it something that you, as a coach, would support?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities to control the type of contact that we do, especially pre-Christmas and probably to the back end of January. We don't do a lot of on-field contact other than structured drills where it's footwork. It's more safe contact. It's not live. And, my thought process is you've only got so many tackles in you in a year. And if you're bashing each other for a whole preseason for injuries or head knocks or just general wear and tear on your body, I don't think you're going to get through the grueling NRL season. So I'm open to, them putting some rules in and around live contact at training for sure. But I do think we've got to still have an opportunity for us to have the one-on-one contact in terms of training the technique right, because I feel like at the moment one of the biggest reasons why we're getting a lot of head knocks is because we're not getting our bodies in right positions to make tackles. And I think a lot of that's come from over the last 10 years being more wrestle-orientated than safe tackle practice. And that goes right down. I remember watching an under-10s game at Shark Park a few years ago and listening to a coach talk about slow death on the sideline. And I was like, what are we talking about? We just got to get back to teaching kids and all the way through into first grade safe tackle practice, where to put your head, how to approach a tackle, all that sort of stuff. Because I think it's the competitive advantage now in first grade to be able to minimise head knocks, first and foremost, which can change a game or change a player's career. But also, if you don't get your feet right, you tackle high or you get it wrong and you're going to get sent off or spend time on the sideline. So I think there's a real, for us as a club, I really want to focus on footwork into collision and understanding how to be safe about that.
Yeah, that's interesting about that competitive advantage piece. Because this ain't going away.
No way.
It's not going to go back to how it was.
So in our SG ball and stuff, I want to really focus on two-man tackles, safe approaching it, both players coming in from the side. You see it all the time. We're flying out of the line, lose our feet, lose our body position, and boom, shoulder on head, head on head. And again, we want that. Everyone loves that brutality of our game, and they'll say, yeah, but we want that. You can still have that in a way that doesn't. You don't have to knock yourself out doing it. And I've had this conversation with Cam. He's got to be smarter in the initial parts of the game because once a bit of fatigue gets in, those flying out of line things tend to go away. It's always the first 10 minutes.
Or the fatigue sets in for the tackle and you get the head.
Or you get the head on the wrong side. I mean, how many times you see where players these days put their head on the wrong side and get hip on? Happens so often.
It does
so often. And again, I think we need to practice safe tackle technique.
Do you think that's fatigue, or do you think that's technique, or a combination of the both?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's more we need to teach players get back to approaching to the tackle, where to dip, where to hit, and to understand. Sometimes there's going to be a reactional thing where footwork gets you.
Yeah.
But again, even that, blokes are dipping too early, bit of footwork, boom. I think we saw that's what happened to Cam against the Roosters in round 25. Victor Radley. These guys are, they're elite level athletes. But the more we spend time on, standing taller for longer, dipping later, approach to our tackle, I do feel like there's a competitive advantage for every team who spends more time on that.
That's interesting. I think you could be onto something, which would be hugely beneficial. Absolutely, it would.
And again, for me as a coach, it's about making sure your players are safe. Yeah. You know, I don't want to be here in 10 years' time talking about pushing a player to do things that have not set him up for life after footy. Yeah, you know, for me, life after footy is important. Is one of the main factors that I talk to the players about. Because there is a lot of life after footy. It's not, you know, most of us, if we're lucky, will get to early 30s and a lot of fatherhood and married life and a lot of the experiences to experience that are going to bring us a lot of joy. We want our players to embrace that.
Yeah, it is hard though, because I know that the psyche of the motivated athlete, where it's the be all and end all, and you just want to put it all out there.
Yeah.
You do, but I guess there's a better way to do it as well.
But again, it's using that motivation within the process and how it's to get it be successful. There's no point flying out of the line, knocking yourself out and coming off the field. No. That's not helping you and ain't helping your teammates either. So, again, there's a balance there, or flying out of the line and hitting somebody high, because that's going to cause just as much in terms of losing games. You're going to lose players. Look at our game against the Roosters. What was it, 5 sin bins or something?
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah.
And it's hard to argue if that's the way the game. It's hard to argue with any of them. You know, there's punching in the head. There's hitting blokes high. It's, you know, head slamming. You know, every one of them. You can, you know, do we want that? No, but do we want to protect the players, or do we? There's got to be some understanding from coaches and players that take some responsibility on, you know, yeah, we want to be aggressive, yeah, we want to be physical, but we want to make sure that we're all around the bar and having a good time in 20 years' time as well.
I like what you say, though, about you can actually use it for a competitive advantage, which, you know, obviously we want to probably raise the health and safety aspect and tip those scales a little bit, but when you throw in the competitive advantage aspect to it, it makes real sense. South Sydney moving forward, how do you take them back to the same levels as 2014 and win that premiership? It's been 5 prelim finals, grand final the previous year. How do you get them there?
Yeah, I don't think it's about looking back. You know, I've been involved in 3 of those prelim finals and the grand final in the 4 years that I've been at the club, and in that we've transitioned. Our premiership window's closed 3 times, and we're still being in prelims and all grand finals fighting for the reality is you're not guaranteed anything in our game, and you know, we need to get there. And you spoke about it first. My first priority at the moment is getting the team fit and healthy and ready for what we need to do for an NRL season. And I felt like we didn't, through a later finish, extended pre-season, and then horrendous COVID list at the start of pre-season. We just didn't get a pre-season, and we saw that in our soft tissue injuries. We saw that in players breaking down. So my first priority now is to make sure that every player in every position gets the physical preparation they need to play NRL. And if we can do that, then we've ticked one box already. And then having a periodised plan on how we get that group of 30 ready for September. And so that's the first thing we need to do. Secondly, we need to have some honest conversations in and around the psyche that's going to get us there and how we're going to approach that. And I feel like there's some things that we put in place last year that are ready to develop even further that'll help in that area. And then the last thing is getting them there and excited about what we can achieve and not fearful of what we can't. I'm a big believer in I'd rather look at what I can do and not what I can't do. I'd rather focus on doing my job for my teammate rather than letting down my teammate. You know, it's the same outcome, but it's a different way of thinking about it. You know, I never thought I don't want to let you down, Jim. I'm not going to let you down. It was more like, I've got your back. I'm going to do my job. You know, I think that's an action that I'm going to do rather than what I'm not going to do. And I think that's an area that if we can get to finals and get excited about where we were, which we did this year, and be healthy, then they're things that are going to give us a chance. Yeah.
Because you've got one of the strongest spines in the competition, and I include Cam Murray in that. I believe that the spine has evolved now to include the lock forward, especially the way that you guys play.
You could probably take a bit of What's a bit of credit for that, mate?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, mate.
Bit of ball playing, yeah, mate.
Yeah.
You did, yeah. Now that ball playing middle has evolved, and I think you're a big part, especially coming back in. You did it in Super League for years anyway, but bringing that to the NRL is definitely, you look at the best teams now, there's Cam Murray, Isaiah Yeo, Victor Radley, Jake Trbojevic. They've all got that middle forward who can ball play, and it does make a big difference.
It's super important, and just on your spine, just looking at it on paper, it's incredibly impressive. But I'm looking at Cookie and just the disappointment, missing out on the Kangaroos. Is that a conversation you've already had with him, or that you're gonna have with him when he comes back to pre-season?
Yeah, Cookie lives a couple hundred metres from me, so I bump into him quite often. And yeah, look, it is a disappointment. There's no doubt about that, because when you're at that level, you want to stay there. I understand that, but I think for Cookie, the only thing missing in his career now is a premiership. He's played for Australia, he's played Origin. He's won. He's been in probably the most successful New South Wales side over the last decade. So he's achieved a lot. It's only about turning that motivation into what I said before about a leader. It's about serving the people around you. And it's about, you've got probably 3 years, maybe 4 for Cookie. He's a supreme athlete into winning a premiership. It's what we do that gives you a legacy. And I think with that spine, as you mentioned, Cody, Cookie, I think the talent they have, that their biggest focus should be justifying their talent, and by doing that, it's to win a premiership. And then they know that they've achieved what they, in my opinion, what their ability should achieve. And that's my job to help them find ways to do that.
Yeah, they're certainly capable of it.
Yeah, 100%.
They're certainly capable of it.
I think them guys locking in, and fingers crossed in their long-term futures at the club, it just takes away any, okay, this is about us as a group now and what we're going to do over the next 3 years, and let's go after it. And I know that, like I said, I think we played 10 of our last 13. We won last season, and 10 of those games were against top 6 sides. So we should be coming into pre-season confident. Like I said, my job now is to get them insular in their focus in pre-season, narrow it down into short blocks, and get us as fit, strong, and as technically ready through our processes as we can be for round 1.
All right, cool. Just got a couple of questions, quick fire ones to get through. What do you enjoy most about being a coach?
Yeah, I think that ability to help a player achieve his goal and achieve his dream, and to see the impact that has on their families. I've been fortunate to do the things that I wanted to do, and I'm quite proud of the journey I had. But to see you influence somebody else, that's what gives me the biggest boost.
What's your biggest dislike, or are there any dislikes about being a coach?
Yeah, well, I could say media, but we don't get paid without them. So, yeah, no, I don't. I think the dislike is the uneducated or ill-informed discussions in and around your club. Sometimes they're just things that are said that aren't factual or don't have actual understanding of what goes on inside a footy club. But I understand that's part of the job. I mean, I come from a place in Super League where we love to have that kind of interest, and I'm not naive to the fact that it does generate a lot of revenue for the playing group. And unfortunately, not just footy, it's everywhere in social media now. Everyone wants to have a crack, but yeah, it is what it is.
Do you read all the papers, watch all the shows?
I don't read papers unless I'm at the cafe and they're sitting there. I'll read it. I don't deliberately not read. I just don't buy papers. But I watched 360 for a while, and then I was like, I can't keep watching this. If I'm going good, I'll watch it. If I'm not going good, I don't watch it. So, yeah, I think for me it's more about when I've got to get better at when I get home being home.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge for me moving forward now as a coach. It's not what I'm doing at work. It's what I do when I get home from work. And I'm pretty lucky to have the support of my 3 daughters and my wife. And I don't want them to be a side part to what my career is. I want them to be part of it, but I've also got to be engaged when I'm at home. So that means turning off 360 a few times more a week. But it depends. If we're going good, they want to watch it as much as I do. But yeah, I need to probably put that away a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say what's your greatest challenge, but I guess that when you're in a high pressure job like you are, and a 24/7 job, that being present at home is difficult, isn't it? Because there's always something to watch, something to attend to. It would never end.
I'm an external thinker as well, so I'll be often talking to myself what's going on in my head, and my girls are into me all the time. What are you doing, Dad? And I'm like, shush, I'm thinking.
I'm just having a conversation with myself.
What are you talking to? I said, I'm just visualising loudly things that I'm. But I do need to put my phone in, get home, and shut off. And that, to be fair, was one of the things that Wayne done really well. That he probably advised me on, was making sure you have your time away from the game.
Well, JD, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been fascinating for me to sit here, but I'm sure our listeners and our viewers will be amazed by the story of a bloke that took a chance, not grew up, but living in Kirby, head coach, player coach of the Keighley Cougars, Northern Pride with half the Wakefield 2008 squad, and here you are as head coach of one of the biggest teams in the NRL. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and talk with you. I wish you and South Sydney well next year. They're a joy to watch and great to comment on. So it makes my job as a pundit so much easier when you guys are playing well. So thank you again for joining us on the Buy Round.
No worries. Thanks, Jimmy. It's much easier sitting here than you running over me on the field, mate. So I'll take that. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.